Roll call, please.
Keel.
Here.
Pinker.
Yes.
Meyer.
Jack here.
Steingraber.
Here.
Yes.
Welcome, everybody. Well, when we get to that point, but I should mention that Cindy's been gracious to join us this morning in the absence of Lori, so be gentle with her.
Yes, please.
I'm curious to know if Cindy volunteered or if she was ordered.
I know, I was asked nicely and I agreed to help out. Lori tries to make it as painless as possible, so.
I'm gonna ride in that pickup truck too.
She took her own
I
vehicle.
actually brought my home because I'm going to be staying for the next meeting. Mine's that really dirty one up there. I don't want
Oh, it's filthy. It's filthy.
I live in the
It's
country.
fine. I left it in the window.
I live in the country.
What, do you shovel dirt in?
No, it's just dusty out there. Can't help it.
Okay, at this point in the agenda is public comment period. Any correspondence? Are there any public comments? Public? Any correspondence or things people want to mention quick up front? Okay, we'll move into approval of the minutes of the June 15th, 2022 regular meeting.
Move approve.
Motion by Andy, second by Steve. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Fire service and law enforcement news updates.
So we've got a lot of items this month. First one I've got for you, this occurred down in Florida. An inmate in a county jail came to the aid of one of the jailers who was being attacked by two other inmates who were attempting to make an escape. Interesting variation on some that I've had before, where we have citizens coming to the aid of the police. Wausau Police recently added another canine to their service. Minneapolis Police Department, they are still searching for a chief of police, and they have decided to up their salary range from 250 into the range of 253,000 to 300,000. They can't attract candidates.
Settle down, Jody.
And there was opposition from the city council. Some members wanted to spend their money on more socially oriented activities. Direct this other one to Chief down at the end of the table. Atlanta Police Department. On June 15th, the mayor announced the officers are going to be getting a 2% cost of living raise plus a $4,000 retention balance, which would apply to patrol, investigators, sergeants, and lieutenants. And they're going to use the American Rescue Plan. Continuing with police department activities, New York University School of Law and the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives started in 2021 with what they call their 30-30 project. And their goal is to see 30% of police recruit classes with women recruits by 2030. And currently about 150 departments and agencies are participating, and several that they noted are noted down below. They highlighted Madison, Wisconsin with 20% in a recent class, Nashville Metro with 40%, and at least in one of the classes from LAPD, they had 50%. They did not mention anything outside of the department academies. They didn't mention anything about technical colleges. Moving over to the fire service end, On June 27th, a captain in the Manchester, New Hampshire Fire Department returned to work after recovering from second and third degree burns over a third of his body. He was rescuing people in November, and he got trapped in a flash orb. For those associated with the fire service, Dr. Harry Carter, who would be billed as a fire service guru, died on June 17th. Fire service expert, author, speaker, columnist for Firehouse Magazine for 32 years. Former high-ranking officer in Newark, New Jersey. And I had the opportunity several years ago to actually talk with Dr. Carter. I think Mike would remember back when several commissioners were proposing a single head over the fire and police departments. I was on the commission at that time, and I contacted Dr. Carter for his insight, and he sent me a very terse email, called me with his telephone number. So I called him, he was home in New Jersey, and I interrupted his lunch, but he talked to me for 45 minutes. That's the kind of guy that he was. And then to finish up, some law enforcement and some fire service activities. Dallas County, Texas is testing 3 Teslas for police use. Cartersville, Indiana, which is a south suburb of Indianapolis, put their first all-electric squad into service in 2009. They now have 7 in their fleet, and they are estimating their current costs per car about $60 a month. But they didn't say whether they have money budgeted in case any of their batteries go or if a car catches on fire.
Which fleet are those that have the Teslas?
They put first Tesla in 2009. They now have 7 in their fleet. Just purchased some more.
I'm sorry, I missed the city. What city and state?
It is Barterville, Indiana, south suburb of Indianapolis.
Okay. I'm just thinking, Wisconsin snow and salt? I don't know.
And I don't know whether this is a municipal city department or whether this is a township department. General Motors recently announced they are going to have a pursuit-rated Chevy Blazer electric vehicle, supposedly with a market date of 2024. And they did not mention, but I assume they're going to submit that to the Michigan State Police Test Program. Baltimore, Maryland Police Department has occurred within the last 2 weeks. They responded to break up a large street drag race. When they arrived, the participants were throwing rocks, bottles, and shining lasers at them. One of the sergeants suffered laser damage to both eyes. And this is similar to what you saw a couple of years ago in Portland, Oregon, and some of the other West Coast cities, where demonstrators and rioters were attempting to blind officers using tasers. And I've mentioned in the past the number of firefighters dying in traffic incidents. It's been 4 more. An ambulance was struck by a semi in Arizona. In Ohio, a fire apparatus, a police car, and the vehicle initially involved in a crash to which the others responded. All of them were struck by a commercial truck, and the fire lieutenant died because of his injuries. On Define crash in Virginia involving a firefighter and deceased, and at a wildfire in Oklahoma, 2 firefighters were burned. Their vehicle had overturned, and 1 died as a result of his burns. That's all that I've got for you this month.
Okay, are there any questions on, or any other information to share?
I have one item of information, Mike, if you don't mind, that right now, home fire deaths, civilian fire deaths in Wisconsin are at a crisis point. We're going to be working with community in Marshfield to put out a PSA for citizens around in our community and around surrounding communities. So right now, we're at 30, last I saw was at 34 home civilian fire deaths in Wisconsin. All of last year, we had 44. Main causes are not working smoke detectors, people not closing their doors before they go to sleep. These are some of the items we're going to touch on when we do communicate with Tom Laux and we get a PSA out there for our folks, but we want to make sure that's known that home civilian fire deaths are very high right now in Wisconsin.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Anything else? Okay. We'll move on to approval of police department bills. Chief?
Okay, good morning. You've got 3 sets of bills in the packet in front of you. One was signed by Commissioner Meek on June 15th, one by Commissioner Steingraber on June 29th, and the last by Commissioner Myers on July 13th. I didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary or noteworthy. However, I'd be willing to answer any questions if there's any, and would ask that for their approval.
Question on page 6E.
Okay.
Wisconsin River Valley Regional Forensic Lab Partnership. What is that, and is that something that we are using more than the state crime lab?
I'm sorry, I'm not finding it here.
Be under Marathon County Sheriff's Office.
That is more for our computer forensic stuff. They've got an awesome lab up there that they've worked out.
Okay.
So in the partnership, we partnered with them for a while. Had it for a couple of years.
Yeah, that's, I remember a couple of years ago you came and asked for it.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I would ask a question, I guess.
Okay.
And this is an example of what drives me nuts with these bills. I know that you paid $11.47 for toilet paper.
Okay.
I also know that you paid $3,642 for vest accessories. The one I know what it is. The other, I have no idea what costs $3,000 as an
Yeah, it's for
accessory.
the vest and accessories. So it's the bulletproof vest, and they're that's how much they are. They're just expensive.
The vest you're wearing would cost $3,000.
I believe so, and the tactical vests are even more. Yeah, with the bulletproof vest. Now, we are in a grant for the patrol vests, where we get half of that reimbursed. They've been slow on the reimbursements, but it really costs the department about half of that for vest.
Okay. What is the difference between what you're wearing and a tactical vest?
The plates inside are rated differently. These plates are rated for smaller weapons than what the tactical vests are, and they have other equipment that are attached to it.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a question on 6M, for the MRAP getting service. I'm just curious for the MRAP how is that as far as longevity and service? What's the issues or what's the ongoing maintenance for that?
We've had different things that have gone wrong with it. It's a diesel engine. We've had some battery issues with it and some other minor stuff that comes up. The problem is that with it being a diesel engine, everything's expensive to fix. On this one, I believe it was a battery issue that we had someone come in to fix it. And with it sitting, most of the time it's just general deterioration, I guess.
Okay.
Overall, it's been very reliable.
Okay, that's where I was driving after. Is it going to be or what?
I don't think so. It's been pretty reliable.
Okay.
Okay, Jody, at the bottom of 6L, top of 6M.
Okay.
I realize the canine group that we work with is in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Are we paying cash on the Illinois tollway to get there, or do we have an iPass?
We've got 2 iPasses.
Okay.
Okay, I would have asked the same question if I was signing the bills on page 6M. Those are canine kind of a wimp when it comes to clipping the nails, or is it just sometimes you gotta have a professional do it?
The maintenance with the dogs, it's easier to have the professionals do it. They've got equipment, they can just do it more safely.
Cause I know of a dog, that puppy that doesn't care to have that done.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna wrap my head with someone and put peanut butter on it.
Would that be cheaper than the $12?
Or nobody got a picture of it. Okay, we do have, I do need a motion to approve Bill.
Move to approve.
Motion by Bill, second by Steve. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Keel?
Yes.
Tinker?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Stankrubber?
Yes.
Me.
Yes.
Okay, approved. Thank you, Chief. Approval of the fire department bills, Chief.
Good morning.
Morning.
We have 3 sets of bills, one signed by Commission President Myers on the 15th, one signed by Commissioner Steingraber on June 24th, and one signed by Commissioner Keough on July 13th. I pulled just a couple items that I thought might be noteworthy. On page 7Q, you'll see a bill in the amount of $12,705 for multi-gear lockers. This was a CIP item for 2022. As you all know, we recently purchased a second set of fire gear for all of our firefighters. This was an effort to reduce cancer and putting on dirty fire gear. As a result, we were storing our fire gear in bags upstairs and racking, which was difficult to find at times, and was taking up racking space that we needed for other equipment. So we did purchase these gear lockers. For the second sets of gear, they also allow for faster drying time for damp gear. They're being stored upstairs in the utility room. They have been assembled and they're ready to go. Also on page 7R, you'll see a bill in the amount of $1,000 paid for bailout training provided by Firefighter Training Development and Coaching LLC. What this bailout training is over time, slowly, along with the new fire gear, we've been purchasing belts and webbing and carabiners that will allow our firefighters to self-rescue themselves by bailing out of a window. Commissioner Penker spoke of a flashover incident in which a firefighter was burned over a third of his body, second, third degree burns. If our firefighters start seeing these conditions happen, they're able to bail out of a window and at least self-rescue themselves. So these incidents are occurring more and more with the volatile materials we all have in our homes. Fires are getting more and more unpredictable. They're hotter, and they're becoming, like I said, more unpredictable in a quicker amount of time. So I felt this was very valuable training for our employees. With that, I didn't see anything else that jumped out at me, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have or questions.
Over at 7C, down in the middle of the bridge, where you've got pencil equipment, body armors, lights and helmets. Just my knowledge of some of that equipment, and I realize fire service equipment may not be the same as the harnesses used by arborists, but the price just seems to be somewhat excessive in my view, so I'm just curious.
Right, so this was a variety of equipment that's used for confined space that had aged out. After 10 years, we generally try to change out equipment due to NFPA regulations. So NFPA says that, if your gear, no matter what condition it's in, after 10 years is no longer good. So what we ended up having to do was this is for confined space rescue, was switch out some equipment there that had aged out. And like you said, Commissioner Penker, carabiners, when they're rated and fire service rated, they jack up the price on you as they're
stronger as well.
Yeah, I had the same question.
No other questions, but I entertain a motion to approve the behavior department to Steve. Motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Keel,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Stammbauer,
Abstain.
Stain,
Abstain.
Meek,
Yes.
Isn't it typical to explain why you're abstaining?
Well, yeah, he called me on it, but if you care to explain.
I think it's 7C at the top of the page. Before I became a commissioner, I'd won a silent auction basket as a public outreach thing they had. I'm not gonna vote on something that personally affects me, so I'm abstaining from this one. Not that I have an issue with the expenses, but because of that one item.
That's fine.
So, that's my comment.
I just thought when someone abstained,
No, it's fine.
the public would follow.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
Yep.
Moving to the police department activities, training reports and correspondence packet. Chief.
Okay, this month again, we were able to do a lot of training and collaboration with our community partners. There was a couple of cool things we were able to do internally, and it was a promotional process for lead officer, which was Libby Abel, and that went very successfully. And also we ran a new hire process, which appears to be very successful thus far. This process is going very well. With that, I entertain any questions and look for listening file.
Any questions on the police department activities?
Yeah, I have a short question.
Chief.
Are you still looking for a replacement for our officer Salzinski's position?
We have the application open now until Friday. Short story is, yeah, we are, but we have the application process open until Friday, and there's some candidates in that process.
Jody, going back a number of days, the Pride Fair, or Pride Rally was down Peninsula Plaza. Is that on June 18th?
Yes, it would have been.
Okay. We had discussed that one previously, but you were notified of that like 2 weeks in advance.
Yeah, approximately 2 weeks, I think.
Information only will have the morning.
Okay.
Morning meeting, please, thank you.
Then, a couple of weeks later, there was that pro-abortion rally.
Yes.
Now, I know that from the news reports, that one came up fairly quickly.
We were not made aware of that ahead of time.
Okay. I take it from discussions with our council, there really were no law enforcement issues at the Pride Fair.
Not really, no. We had,
Okay.
it was more for protection.
Okay. And, just, for the record, there didn't seem to be any problems at the pro-abortion rally.
No.
I am very concerned that there was no notification given to the PD on that. Channel 9 did list a potential organizer for that event. And I'm just thinking it would be good if the department could actually identify that person, reach out to her, and certainly indicate that when we have a controversial issue and you're going to have a rally or a march, it's advisable, encouraged to contact the police department. I am disturbed that that they did not make any contact with us. If there was something going on that was adverse, we could have gotten manpower there, but given the
To my knowledge, I don't think they're actually required to, First Amendment, right?
Okay, I'm not gonna argue that point, but I'll argue the public safety point. That's a highly controversial issue. If there was any problem there, why weren't you there? Where's the police? It just seems to me that it would be prudent on the part of any organizer to contact us.
If there was one positive point about maybe just touching base with them would be to point out to the safety aspect of distracting traffic. And it's a busy intersection in town. I know they want the exposure, but on the other hand, they're distracting a lot of traffic and 4-lane roads and stuff too. That's one thing that stuck out in my mind when I went through there. But as a courtesy, maybe suggested. It's up to you, the chief. Any other comments or questions on the police department activity? We'll receive those and place them on file. Thank you. Item 9 is a request from the police chief.
We are fortunate in our state that police departments across the state have been awarded a certain amount of money. It appears to be that the amount was determined by the size of the community. Our city has access to $50,694 that can be used for various items that are listed in your packet. We could access the money right away with a budget resolution, which would, if approved, would transfer that money from the general fund into ours so we could have access. And then this grant is a reimbursement grant, so that we could submit that back to finance, who would do the paperwork to file for the reimbursements. This grant runs through basically 2 different budget years. The budget resolution would help us access the money now and in the next year without having the budgeted. So with that, I guess I would ask approval to approach police or the finance budget personnel committee and request for budget resolution.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second? Thanks, Steve. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Keel?
Yes.
Pinker?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Steinberger?
Yes.
Yes.
Congratulations on that. It's good to see us pursuing some of those grants.
Thank you very much.
Any idea what you're gonna spend the money on?
We have a couple of ideas in there. I want to review our policy for inclusiveness, and there's some positive media things that could be a possibility. We're also waiting for the budget process to go through too, to see if we can supplement with that.
Dog's toenails quick.
I can get the front and back paws.
Thank you. Congratulations again. Fire department activities, training report, correspondence, chief.
Sure. I just pulled a few items. On page 10A, on June 6th, recruit firefighter Gesser received his oath of office and badge pinning ceremony. Just want to thank everybody that attended that event. On page 10B, several of our deputy chiefs attended the Wisconsin State Fire Conference in Appleton. A lot of good information came back from that. They met with several of our vendors were actually there, including LifeQuest and a few other ones. So we've got some ideas that we're working on just from the networking portion of that and getting out and meeting the other fire chiefs. On page 10A through 10C, you'll notice several of our members have completed the state certified motor pump operator class. So that's for our new recruits. That is a state mandate now that every firefighter has to have motor pump operator and aerial truck operator before they're allowed to drive and pump with that. So that's a requirement that we have to send these our new recruits through. So with that, aerial truck operator begins in August, I believe August 1st. We'll be sending 6 of our members through that class as well. So that is a state certified class through the technical college. Congratulations to those that passed the MPO. June, another very busy month of meetings, tours, training, calls for service. As compared to last year, in June, we were up 8%. Call volume again. I know I'm probably sounding like a broken record. I think every month I've come to you and let you know that we are up in call volume. That's mainly due to 911 calls. As of right now, we're, for the year, for the first half of the year, we're up 16% on call volume as compared to last year. Over 2,000 calls for service, so we are on pace to eclipse 4,000 calls. That would be the first time that's ever happened in our history. So our crews are very busy. Other than that, you'll find statistics and thank you letters in the packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on our activities.
Any questions?
Pete, did you say that they can't drive apparatus without having the motor pumps certificate?
Correct. I believe that law came out in 2018 that they have to go through that course and
Before they can drive, not just operate the pump?
drive and operate the pump. Yes, they have to have motor pump operator class.
Okay.
So we try to send them through as soon as we possibly can. The issue we run into at times is, of course, Mid-State Tech, any school would want to see a full class before they come teach, so it takes a little bit of time to get that together. So a lot of our newer recruits are coming to us with those certifications already. So I believe the technical college system is recognizing that that is a law and perhaps making it part of their associate degree programs.
Otherwise, it's an increase in expense for the department.
Correct. And we do have that budgeted every year since 2018. We have contingency money budgeted in case we do hire a recruit without those certificates.
Okay, thank you.
How does that affect the normal probation process? Does it change the training or things that have been done, or?
It doesn't really change the probationary process. We still, whether they have the certification or not, they still have to learn our equipment and our pumps. So every pump panel is different. We still put them through the same recruit training process. But in addition, if they don't have the certification, they would have to go through that as well. So.
And so when they have the aerial training, is that done here? Is that done somewhere?
It's done here. Yes, we'll try to hold
Your
it.
equipment?
Yes, on our equipment.
Okay, so they don't have to be retrained to deal with the specifics of.
Correct. So for motor pump operator, we had 6 of our members in there. We also had, 3 or 4 Stevens Point firefighters in here as well. Wisconsin Rapids. And they bring up their own engines from those cities, and so they're pumping on their own equipment.
Okay, thank you.
I have several questions for my neighbor. June 10, non-compliance inspections. Who, what, when, where, why?
I guess I can speak to that. 601 South Vine, that would be one. 616 South Cherry. I've also dealt with one over on 2nd Street. And what they are is basically, they're not following up on their fire extinguishers in those particular instances. Commercial properties. So with those, what we've done is we've kind of moved from the inspectors taking care of the non-compliance stuff. We moved it up to the fire prevention deputy chief. And I've taken care of all the non-compliance stuff. We did have one over on 413 East 4th too, where the police department did help with that one as well. That one we tried to reach out to her via the initial inspection, the re-inspect, and actually we tried to make contact and just get the initial inspection. She wouldn't contact us. And that one I reached out with written correspondence. I tried calling, and in addition, we even knocked on her personal residence door, and with no answer, no. So in that one, we had to go with the inspection warrant, and we had to complete the inspection. As you know, with inspections, we have to do inspections on an annual basis, mandated by the state of Wisconsin. If we don't follow through on those things, then it becomes a non-compliance inspection, and then we can actually lose our 2% dues if we don't follow up on these inspections. So in that case, that one was taken care of. The other 2, I've had an opportunity to contact them, and we're still in the process of trying to get those items fixed. Those did result in citations, but once they contacted, they pulled the citations back, and they were under the understanding they were going to fix those items. So it is a big step and it's a lot of extra work and a lot of administrative paperwork to take care of these things, but it's something that we have to do on a routine basis.
Then on the 14th, he met with Development Services to discuss problem properties. How many problem properties do we have?
That one actually speaks to 2411 South Hume.
You don't have to say anymore.
Okay. That property's been a reoccurring, and I can certainly pass on. We actually sat down and put together documentation on a timeline for that property and how much time we've invested in that property. And that one really started back in December of 2021. And even if we went farther back, that went back to 2016. That property was cleaned up at that time. This property became a problem over the COVID period. We couldn't inspect that one, and then we just saw a huge accumulation of contents at that property.
Then down to the 22nd. Was this a general meeting with the development review team, or was this for a specific project?
That would have been a general meeting for the development review team with that particular, what it was on a specific project, but that one would be still closed.
Okay.
As far as to the public.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment that I'm glad to see that the departments co-training each other, that Mac was in here doing self-defense training for the department, so I do appreciate seeing that across town. So keep it up.
And from a historical perspective, the chief mentioning all the time that we have over 4,000 calls for ambulance. There's a historic document that I'll share with everybody from 1977 from Chief Zegon, who mentioned at the time that they certainly didn't have as much equipment for the ambulance service at that time. They certainly didn't have the training that we have nowadays. And they had about 400 calls a month, or 400 calls a year, so.
400 calls a year?
400 a year. So the times change.
Yeah.
The city hasn't gotten that much bigger, so I'll share that article with everybody.
What portion of the people who are in the ambulances are critical care paramedics?
It's the majority of our paramedics. So everybody that was a paramedic in 2017 was trained up to the critical care paramedic level. Not all of our recruits come in with paramedic, but we will try to train them up slowly but surely. I don't have an exact number for you, but it's
That's all right. The intention is to have everyone who rides the ambulance critical care?
Critical, it's the intention to have everybody that rides the ambulance at least a paramedic. Critical care paramedic is mainly for those really difficult interfacility transfers where you may have 5 different medications hanging from a tree and ventilators, stuff like that.
In my head, a related question. Interfacility transfers. What's happening there? Anything changing? Anything new?
No, there's nothing new since we signed the contract in 2017. I would say, I shouldn't say there's nothing new. Perhaps with the 911 calls, the sheer volume of 911 calls we're getting this year, we've seen a dip in the interfacility transfers. Per that contract we signed with Marshfield Medical Center, we have the ability to deny those if we don't have the staffing to staff our own city.
And if you deny because you're busy,
Correct.
what do they do?
They have to call around to other services, perhaps a service like Safer or other different services around that may do those interfacility transfers.
And you need particular training to do those successfully, a higher level of training?
Yeah, on some of those you do, yes. I would say the vast majority of them you could probably get by with a paramedic, but like I said, when they have multiple drips hanging with different medications and they're on a ventilator, that's when you need the critical care portion of that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Let me just go back with two more items related to this. We're talking about the motorboat operator and aerial truck operators. If anybody saw the news last night on either 7 or 9, Wausau just put into use a new aerial truck. And Chief Bartek in his presentation also made note that their responses, both EMS and fire, are again far ahead of last year.
Saw that.
Yeah, and I've also reached out to Point and Rapids. It's the same story everywhere.
Any other comments or questions on the fire department activity? And we will receive those and place those on file. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
We needed the subject. 2023 to 2027 law enforcement CIP update.
I guess I'm not exactly sure what we're looking for here, so I'll just describe what we got in our CIP and go from there. We've got 5 items in our CIP, most of them consisting of our patrol cars. Patrol cars are difficult to come by at this point. There's a supply issue, and so we're scrambling to make sure that we can keep our fleet updated. It's important for us to keep our fleet updated because of the weather that we're in and the type of business that we do. We need to have reliable vehicles. So I'm still waiting to see what exactly we can get in as far as patrol squad cars. We may end up buying some civilian squad cars and outfitting them similar to patrol as a crutch. Ordnance truck, that one, we had 37,000 budgeted for 2022 that we did not use, and we pushed into 2023 and added on another 50,000 for what this is our ordnance truck. The way that we have our ordnance set up right now with the van, there's some cages inside of the van, and in order to put in an ill-tempered dog, at one point it almost seems like you're face to face with the beast. This truck would allow us to be a lot more safe in handling animals. The box portion of the truck has cages on the outer portions of it. And the box portion can be transferred from vehicle to vehicle, so we're hoping to get uses out of that far longer than what the trucks will last us. But we are in the same boat with getting the vehicles in, and we're not sure what that's going to look like at this point. That would be, right now, I believe we're quoted for a Ford F-250 because of the size of the box that we put on it. But again, I don't know what we're going to get and at what price that's going to be, so we're anxiously waiting to see how that turns out. We also did have some investigative vehicles budgeted. We have, for a while, our trend was to buy them every year. We're going to continue that trend for one more year in order to cycle out some of our older vehicles and go to a 2-year. We don't use those, we don't put as many miles on those vehicles as we do with our patrol cars. So we feel that it would be a good investment to push those out a couple of years and rotate them out. But again, some of that might be dependent on how we come out with our squad cars. It may help that line item if we have our fleet updated, and we may be able to push off a little bit more. Or depending how they hold up with the patrol, we may have to replace those. So that's a little bit up in the air with our supply portions. The last 2 items, first is the roof replacement. This is something we budgeted for 2023. We've put this off for a number of years, and it's getting to the point where we need to improve the roof. We got to fix it. If the city has a chance of selling the building in the future, we're going to have damage if we don't fix our roof. So this is something I think that we need to do this year. And the last is just the regular replacement of our emergency sirens. We budgeted for this. This year is $18,000 to replace one of the sirens, emergency sirens, and it's something we need to keep up with so that we keep them in good working order. Those are the 5 items.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah. The CIP items that you submitted, Where did that list come from?
It actually was given to me when I was promoted. So, I guess which list are you with?
Well, you got a list of things to put on your CIP, right? You got a sheet of paper and you got, who created that list?
To be honest, I don't know. I imagine it would be either through Pat and Travis ahead of time.
Okay. We never saw that list, did we?
Before it was gone, before it went into CIP, I believe it was brought to our attention. I couldn't say for sure.
I'm not sure, because I think the CIP was like the first month after I was promoted.
March 9th was our CIP, our initial CIP.
It's my understanding that was brought forward, because Pat explained to me what
You know, maybe I wasn't here because there was a stretch with COVID and all that stuff. But the CIP that you submitted came here first.
Correct.
I don't think we did our job. But, okay. It's not your problem.
I wonder, it would be helpful to me if you could summarize what you just said, simply, like what maybe was originally put in, just a summary. What was originally put in, what was approved, and what?
all of the items that I listed were all approved. I went on the board with it.
Okay.
And there really was no question about
All right, I'll ask a different question, but related. Pete gave us a thing like this with stuff on it. Who decided, is your CIP request reduced now from what you submitted?
no.
So yours stands as you submitted it, there's no reductions?
Yes.
Fire department is different in that there are reductions.
Correct.
All right.
And on a personal note, I would also look for guidance as to how I should present this in the future. It's my first time around.
Yeah, no, that's fine. This whole business, I think we need to think through differently than we have up to now. And so, in the one hand, it's the city's business because it's money. But on the other hand, what you put on that list is our business. And so, you know, if we'd done our job, we might have said to you, how do you justify putting on a new vehicle when the one you got's only got 3,000 miles on it? And that discussion should have occurred, and it never did. And I didn't know about that until I stopped one day when that vehicle was in the driveway. And in my head, I hadn't seen it before. What the hell, did they get a new? So I stopped, and there was a guy working on welding machines on the hazmat trailer, and he and I talked for about, he says, it's only got 2,600 miles on it. My God. And now I would have, if I known, you know, what goes on the list is in part the business of the commission.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I would agree.
Yeah.
Just a couple comments further on what Jody was talking about. The last article I saw in Government Fleet was saying that if you're looking at chassis mounted vehicles or equipment, you're looking at a minimum of a 20% increase in chassis price right now, probably higher. And relative to the squads, the articles that are coming through on the Government Fleet website, you know, they're constantly saying they've got cars,
No chips.
and no chips. They had cars in lots. They can't go anywhere. And the third item, I realize we're still in the building. I realize we have to have a good working condition in the police department headquarters building. And it may not be anything starting on the 2nd Street corridor projects until some settlement is made on what Weingarten is going to be doing with this shoe factory. So that's possibly 5 years out. But I don't believe it is too soon right now to start talking to Board of Public Works and some other city officials about what we're going to do with that police department building. That is a critical piece of infrastructure. Having been on the ad hoc committee for the 2nd Street project, you know, that building, the police department garage at the Baltus property, former Baltus property, they're all in prime development areas. And I would certainly prefer to have some conversation and thought start now rather than 5 years from now and suddenly say, oh, you know, XYZ company wants to purchase all those properties for development and then we are caught short.
Having some sense of that, because the CDA, according to the development planners, is the sort of critical agency for that project. If it goes forward as planned, you've built the current police department into a tiny island that can't be expanded or changed in any direction. And I think before the 2nd Street project goes forward, some additional thought needs to go into what to do about the police department.
Right.
And we have a council member here. Who in the city or what process that entails, I don't know. And I know there's all kinds of political stuff related to this, but the fire department needs a north station. Not a big thing, you know, 1 truck, 1 ambulance, and some place to sleep in an office or whatever. But if we built a police station, and a police station is, a police station in my head can be anywhere. If we built a new police station and we put it on the north side and added a bay or 2 for the fire department to use, that would make most sense and be economically viable. And if we do the 2nd Street project and we don't do something about moving that police station, it simply will not work.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the police department falls within that TIF zone. I think there's running around there, so there is some opportunity through the 2nd Street development too that I think just, I don't know how exactly, but just working it out further.
You know, I've been involved now for a long time, and I think was some real appropriate and well-intentioned desire to make the police station that we have now a viable entity and work for another 20 or 30 years. But if you do the 2nd Street project and take the storage stuff away and the parking, it just ain't gonna happen. It's just not gonna work. And I think you're right. We need to start talking about it now.
And I think
all this stuff takes years.
And we have to also recognize a study had been done several years ago about the police department and where to locate. I've gone through that study several times. I don't think the conclusions are good conclusions.
Is there access to this study that we can get to and read it? I mean,
I'd have to search.
Steve, I may have. Let me double check. I thought I ran across it in the office. Let me see if I can find it.
because if you could make that available to us so we don't have to complete the agreement that we have from Go, or at least see
It's,
Go.
I'm thinking we would use that probably as a launching point, but I don't know that, at that time, I believe the conclusion was to remodel the existing building.
Yeah, the conclusion, on that one, there were 3 locations that were looked at as the top 3. And the present building was not in the top 2. I mean, it wasn't with the highest rated site, but I think there was this conclusion made, oh, let's not move it.
But at that time, did we have an MRAP and some of the bigger things and some of the?
We may have had the MRAP, but I think we were storing it here.
Yeah.
We had some temporary Band-Aids. I don't think that were we're accounting for. If we lose the storage across the street, we're gonna be in some trouble. And I think that that storage across the street was intended in that plan to be the parking lot for the police department. We would walk across the street. But if that's taken up by the Second Street project, then we would lose that parking area, and we would lose the parking area that's attached around the building. I agree with Commissioner Keough. I don't think that's a viable plan, and that's not even addressing the other issues, like when there's a train we can't get out of our parking lot. Close proximity to the tracks and that's.
Yeah, I mean, close proximity to the tracks alone, we've done several mock disasters here for hazardous material. If you're to have a derailment, almost every plume incorporates their building of hazmat. I understand that train derailments don't happen very often, but there's the potential with their facility being right next to the tracks that if something were to ever happen, their building is untenable, all their equipment.
I agree. I was in high school during my week, and I knew classmates that got displaced for a couple months. So I'm from Oneida County. I know the stories.
Yeah, we have 38 trains that come through here a day, and they're carrying crude and anhydrous and all kinds of nasty stuff, so.
Yeah, it happened out east in the last year or two, where the whole downtown was empty for months because they had a derailment with hazardous stuff. Anyway, I think it takes time to do that, and you gotta find the money. I mean, you just have to do that. And that takes time. You've got to prioritize, and that takes time, and there are competing interests who all can make good cases. So I think that we really need to begin. And as much as the Common Council has an obligation to think out for the city in the future, I mean, you represent the citizens, and the citizens' interests aren't tomorrow, they're 20 and 30 years out. Well, we're supposed to be doing the same thing. Let's find a way to start talking about it now. And the more we look at it and the harder we consider it, I think ultimately the better decisions will come to. And I can't imagine that if you put a group of well-intentioned, reasonable people together, they would say 20 years from now, we gotta have the police station where it is. And that just doesn't make sense to me.
I think with
I'm off my box now.
I think with the discussion we've had, that it would serve us well to making a goal for ourselves before the next CIP to come up with some direction, and with the intention of putting a fire and police safety building in the next CIP so that it could be considered and possibly placed somewhere in that 5-year plan to get it get the wheels rolling. Because so much stuff is going to fall into place quickly with stuff that is already in the CIP. And I certainly, as it's been mentioned by some other people, that I certainly don't want to be on the outside looking in. Joy and I have had talks about the safety building, possible locations, just in talking, and the world of hurt that we'd be in if we just lost the Altus building. I mean, that's critical. And to see and I certainly don't want to stifle the development of the corridor, but the city garage is probably the next one in line for consideration for a large expenditure on the city's part. And I think the very next one would have to be a public safety building, and utilizing possibly as a site on the north end where we can incorporate a second station, which was needed 10 and 15, 20 years ago, and it still hasn't been addressed yet. So.
Yeah, I think there's been 3 studies done dating back to the 1970s.
Yeah.
Even in the 70s, it called for actually a second station and then a third to be built on the south end. So.
Yeah, the latest one recommended that in the future would possibly be a third station.
Yeah.
North end, south end.
I think we're going to.
Oh, go for it.
I think that if we're looking at a northwest area. We need to also find out when the railroad plans to make that viaduct something that the fire apparatus can go under. Because otherwise we're on a losing end trying to go that way. So it needs to be tied together.
Is there a plan to do that?
I don't think so.
Well, nobody wants to take the responsibility for it. The city won't do it, state won't do it, railroad won't do it. Because whoever takes responsibility for it is gonna have to pay for it. That's been the tradition.
Well, I'm sure, I mean, I guess, and then going on that, I mean, and the reason why it hasn't been done is it's not the sexy, it's not the fun thing to do. You can't get third-party donors to put their name on a police station. It's straight out the city. There is really no naming rights, like, you know, building a stadium or building whatever. It's the city, which, because you can't third-party fund it. The only name, if they do build it, Fred Beal's name should be on that, if it's anything other than Marshfield Public Safety Building. So it's gonna be the community pulling together.
Well, if someone would pay for it, I'd see that it was named.
You know, I disagree from that as a conflict of interest. I don't think it should be named for any corporate entity because it is the city's. And really, those guys right there, and these guys too, but this is the primary job of government. They're there to slap down the idiots in the world so the people can do good. So that's my soapbox. So.
Well, you know, we all try, I think, as all of us who are involved in these kinds of things are trying to do the best job we can for the city. It's not our money, it's not our, you know, it's the citizens' money. But I've said before, the city can do anything it wants. It has enough money to do whatever it chooses to do. It just can't do everything it wants to do. And so it's a matter, you know, it's like your checkbook. I once said in a speech, I always wanted an Aston Martin. Well, I've got enough money now, I could buy one. But I'd have to live in it. And the city is kind of in the same shape. They've got enough money to do whatever they absolutely have to do, but they can't do everything that they need to do. That's the problem. So we've got to build a priority. We've got to help the city build a priority for the police station and fire and so on and so on. Anyway.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap that one up, and I appreciate the input, and let's go from there. President, I'll try to organize something where we can concentrate on that one particular subject. Some sort of, with a goal of it meeting the deadline to submit it in the next CIP. Not the particulars, but at least because if you spread it all over 2-3 years, it's easily more palatable. And you know, the planning could be 1 year, the land acquisition could be next, construction could be next. So I mean, with that in mind, we'll move forward.
Thank you.
There's no action to be taken on that, it's just an update. So the next item is the 2023 to 27 fire rescue. Chief.
Thanks. So at the March 9th, 2022 meeting, we did submit our CIP for 2023 through 2027. It was valued. We had several of these, all these projects were approved at that meeting. What happens, and I've been fortunate enough that Scott, Chief Owen, took us along to these CIP meetings to, as deputies, to learn the process. So I've been at several of these. I kind of knew how the process worked. I don't think Chief Gurink had the opportunity or to do that. So what happens is it gets approved at the Police and Fire Commission level. We meet as a city, as a group, at a community room and look at the entire city's CIP project list. There's a number, I think this comes from finance, a combination of finance, city administrator, public works director, on how much about can be budgeted for the CIP. If there's a reduction that needs to be made, we talk as a group and discuss what we have on our individual CIPs plans, and then, try to make reductions or move things down the road a little bit if they can be, and discuss the overall needs and priorities of the city as a whole. Several of these meetings take place and it comes before the Common Council, and they discuss it and approve or disapprove of these projects based on budget. After those meetings, basically we learned that we needed to cut about $3 million from what we had in the current CIP as a city. So we looked long and hard at our projects. We had several that we either removed, reduced, or adjusted. I'll go through those with you. So the fire protection budget, we had boiler replacement scheduled for 2023. This one was actually changed at the council level. I believe it was Alderperson Wagner moved that this was more important to get done, that this was both heating, that he wanted to see it done in 2022. So this was actually moved to out of the CIP and into the ARPA funds for this year. We're collecting bids right now. I believe the bid process closes on Tuesday. So we'll have that project completed before the 2022 heating season per the council's request. Squad 1 replacement, that was the vehicle you were referencing, Commissioner Keogh. Generally what we do is we have a vehicle replacement plan. So engines we usually keep about 25 years. This particular vehicle is a squad, and as I mentioned before, this carries all of our hazardous materials equipment, our confined space rescue equipment. It does have a mobile command center for an incident that may occur that we have to be there, like a Waiwega type incident where we need a command center. It was actually, this came out of, I know we got grant money. If the whole thing wasn't paid for, a large portion of it was paid for through after 9/11. I don't remember what those funds were at the time, but that's how we got this vehicle actually. It was through a grant process, so it did not cost the city anything initially. So as I mentioned before, we have a plan for how long vehicles, we expect vehicles will last. This was placed in that vehicle replacement plan. It was placed in the CIP about 2 years ago for replacement. And it was put in there mainly as a placeholder. So this year, we decided to take a look at that project as it's coming out very soon in 2 years. The squad has literally under 3,000 miles on it. I think you referenced 2,400. So knowing the city needed to cut $3 million as a whole, this was kind of our chance to help out the city, and it doesn't need to be replaced. We did take it into Mid-State Truck. I wanted to verify that the frame was still in good shape, that it was in good mechanical working order. They did an evaluation on it. It came back as in excellent shape, as you might imagine. The only caveat that we or issue that we might run into a problem with is with parts. So that's true. I believe it's the Sterling chassis is, those parts are getting hard to come by. I don't know if they make that brand anymore. That's the only issue we might face coming down the road. However, it only has 3,000 miles on it. It should be in good shape. We do annual maintenance on it, DOT checks and everything else. So we thought this was our chance to help the city out. And it doesn't really need to be replaced. What it needs is updating. It was built in 2004. It doesn't have a cradle point. It doesn't have a mobile data terminal in it. It doesn't have the things we need if we're going to use it as a mobile command center to hook up computers so we can research chemicals if there's a hazardous materials incident, things like that. The lights on it are old. They're the old halogen lightings. We want to upgrade that to LED. It's easier on the truck. They provide better lights. And again, thinking as a mobile command center, the LED lights just put off more lumens, and they're just overall better. So as we started collecting quotes and bids to upgrade this vehicle, we figure we can make this work for $150,000 versus $800,000 to replace the entire vehicle. So that's the route we decided to take with that. Again, reducing the overall CIP by $650,000. UTV and trailer was slotted for 2025. The thought process behind this was it would be used for, let's see here, the area across from Greasy Park, across 29th Street is city-owned property. That's a great big field. Thought was is if there's ever a brush fire in there, we can't get fire apparatus into that area. The thought was is if we could outfit this UTV with a pump capable of pumping water and also use it at events, and there's a retrofit available for these UTVs where you can place an actual backboard on there to transport patients. The thought was is for Hub City days and things like that, the fair, we could actually get patients from, say, a remote location out to the ambulance. That was the whole thought process behind the UTV and trailer. You know, after thinking about it a little bit and talking to even Chief Goering, there are UTVs that we can get for free for a period of time. There are local dealers that will allow us to borrow them. The other concern with the UTV and trailer is where are we going to store it? Our apparatus bay is full right now. We just felt that this was a project we could at least remove for now and evaluate and see what other options are out there. So we decided to remove this project in 2025. Training center building construction. This one was also removed. It was for an amount of $200,000. There's another $200,000 that was slotted for donations. And what this was for was to put up a building at the training center. The thought process behind this building was it was going to be a classroom, would have a bay or two for fire equipment. It also provides some training opportunities down there. We decided to remove this for now as for two reasons. We don't have matching funds at this point from Mid-State Technical College to build this building. And number two, we don't have specific plans to build this building either. So the thought is once we get to that point, perhaps this project comes back into the CIP, but for now, it was just kind of there as a placeholder. We don't have anything specific for it at this point, so it was removed from the budget. Those are the changes. Do you want me to go through everything else we have in there that was already approved? Just the changes?
No changes.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the fire protection budget. In the emergency medical service budget, we had three items that were either removed or increased actually. For 2023, ambulance 98 needs to be replaced. It is the very last ambulance. The unfortunate thing is there are times that we still need to use this. We've had all 5 ambulances out of the station on multiple occasions already this year. That was actually increased due to the fact that ambulance manufacturers were seeing about a 26% increase due to inflation, difficulty finding chassis and things like that. So we asked at the council meeting that this be increased by $32,000, and that did pass that council. Again, UTV and trailer purchase, so that was going to be a split with fire protection. Since it was going to be a multi-purpose vehicle, both EMS and fire, there was a 50-50 split. I just talked about the UTV and trailer purchase being cut out of the budget, so that was removed for 2025. And then in 2026, you'll see a corresponding increase as well for ambulance 99's replacement just due to inflation again. So that was approved at Common Council. So in summary, I guess that's our changes. We don't feel this is going to affect our overall operations or our plans moving forward, but yeah, that's what I have for you. At this point, I'll take any questions.
Questions, Andy?
You just said at least a few times you've had 5 ambulances out at a time. That's 2 personnel on each ambulance.
Correct.
Minimum.
Yep.
And that means you've got 10 people out.
Mhm.
Who else is here to fight fires?
We call back personnel. So anytime we drop below 5 personnel in the station, we're calling in additional personnel for overtime. So they're backfilling the station.
Yeah. And we know what a problem that can be.
It can be a problem.
Second question. Gotta get the order right in my head. You submitted the CIP to the city. And the city administration took everyone's CIP, added it all up and said, oops, we don't have money to cover all of this. So all of you've got to look and come back with a reduced request.
Correct, yeah, we're asked to take a good hard look at what can be either removed, reduced, or pushed back a bit.
Who decided what could be reduced or pushed back?
That I made the ultimate decision on that.
You did, all right. Because there has been an issue with the city saying you can't have that truck.
Right.
And my argument has been, the commission decides, you can tell us to take $1 million out, but we decide where it comes from. And I was hoping that that was the way it was handled this year.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
This just be a follow-up to Andy's question. 2026 is an engine 4 replacement.
Yes.
Now, we know $1,440,000 in 226 might not be figured. It's probably going to go up. But we also know that depending upon loads in some of the major departments, that they're doing equipment replacements, smaller departments can get pushed back on company schedules. What is the current lead time in terms of doing specifications and then saying, we're going to order this? How much lead time do we need?
So we're gonna need, we'll begin working on the 2026, we'll begin working on this likely at the end of 2024 or early 2025. So we need a little over a year lead time to start the process and get this going.
So then, you're looking at hopefully getting bids on this and ordering sometime during the first quarter of 2025? Or
We would be probably working on the specs in late 2024 and early 2025 and putting it out to bid in early 2025 for the 2026 replacement.
So you expect it to take from the order placed to getting the machine a year at least?
Yep, and it depends on manufacturer. That can be anywhere from 9 months to a year and a half.
Yeah, okay.
To build one of these, depending on how complex and we need it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? For the update?
Yeah.
We'll want to take that into consideration before the, not too far down the road. Going over to the next CIP for the department. So there's some good calls you made as far as changes and stuff like that. It's always nice to be nice to the city. Helping them all, like you say. Okay.
A general question, Mike. Will we see a budget?
Budget, an annual operations budget
Yeah.
And yes,
eventually. Yeah.
I can speak a little to that. So we have 2 new people in finance. As of yesterday, I didn't have all the numbers, so we pushed it back to the August meeting. on a regular budget.
And the city's okay knowing they're gonna get their stuff?
Yes, I talked to the city administrator and he was,
That's fine, that's fine.
Yeah, he's gonna be accommodating in that regard. Okay, any items for future agendas?
Yeah, just a question. We've been getting an email from the city administrator about a joint meeting with city council. What's up?
There's some questions as far as the status of the EMS budget, the operations and the enterprise fund. And in order to appraise everybody with those concerns in one sitting and not have to go over 2 or 3 different times, we decided to have a joint presentation so that everybody can be appraised and we can start working on some solutions to it. We were made aware of it maybe 2 months ago. And we've been meeting with finance and with the city administrator, chief, and myself, and we were trying to first identify the problem, second of all, try to get a work plan in place, and it was deemed best to make one presentation. So that's something to look forward to.
yeah. It's looking like early August, I think August.
Yeah, August 2nd or something. I mean, there's 2 days being bounced around to correspond with either a finance meeting or a public works meeting, because half of the council will be there at the time, and if it won't take much, then and entice the other ones to show up with the same thing. So it's a good time, actually, for timing reasons. It's a good time to look at the contract effect on the EMS budget and other issues. There's so much stuff involved in increased volume and the calls and everything else. So make sure that we maintain a price fund as we've known it through the years. So.
Can I ask a question, because you went into the historical stuff in 1977?
Yeah.
The fire department had 400 calls for a whole year.
Yeah.
How many personnel did they have then versus now with the volume that we have?
I think it was,
and even the complexity of calls for
Yeah.
service, I would think.
Yeah, I think
Are we
they are
so understaffed?
32, I think.
32?
I believe, if I recall. I mean, I've been purging all my stuff,
Yeah.
and I came across that article and I wanted to share it with you.
And he's got to read it before he purchases it.
Yeah. 2 o'clock in the morning.
and complexity of calls are,
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to show you a video, and I can certainly do that at one of these videos of a fire in the 1970s versus the fire we face now. With legacy furniture, as a home occupant, you had, 18 minutes to escape from a fire in your home. The fire just sits there and it doesn't really grow very fast. Right now, you have about three minutes. That fire grows so fast due to the synthetic fibers and furnishings we have in our home nowadays that you couple that with lightweight truss construction and building construction practices nowadays. We've seen building collapse faster than ever. You're looking at I-beams that are glued together. It's vastly different than the 1970s. Fires are much hotter nowadays. There's just so much that goes into it, Commissioner Meek, that I'd love to be able to present that someday.
I'd like to see it.
I can start working on something like that.
Honestly, that would be a good thing for the public to see. I mean, just in general, especially if people wonder why do we have so many this, why is the call volumes this, or whatever, why do we need this equipment, all that's why right there.
Yeah, and we're not even, I didn't even touch on EMS. I mean, that's 92% of our call volume. If you think of EMS in the 70s, it was basically putting a person in the back of a station wagon. Yeah, I'm gonna they were hearses, is basically what it was, and you'd put them in the back of the hearse, and both people would jump up front and drive them to the hospital with talking through a window to the patient. Now we're we have an emergency medical center room on wheels that we're actually doing everything the emergency, the ER is gonna do in advance of getting them to the hospital. So it's night and day difference. And that speaks to the second station as far as response times. With the fires were growing quicker and knowing what we know about brain injury and strokes and heart attacks nowadays compared to the 1970s, we know we need to get there quicker. We just have to. And again, that speaks to the second station and our response times and needing that north side station. So at least some vehicles and manpower on that.
In fact, the first 2 ambulances that the city fire department had since 1964 were because the 2 funeral homes were going out of the pickup business. And the city bought those 2 hearses and started an ambulance service. So,
Sounds like a conflict of interest to me.
Yes, I said that 100 times too, yeah.
and they had a station car that was station wagon that they used.
Well, and that's why I have all old furniture and live in a house that was built in 1891. I figured it'd take mine an hour and a half to burn.
There you go.
But then where all the books are.
Well, they burn slow.
Well, being no other business before the commission and hearing no objections, meeting's adjourned.